Here we go. Alright guys, thank you for joining me on Helmer Live. My name is Jess and I'm with Kinder Stampo, and today we're going to be working on making some cards. I know that you guys have been following me on my personal blog, and I've been making a tons and tons of cards lately, and it's mainly because I've become addicted to coloring with my Tim Holtz Distress Markers, and these are the cards that I've been making with them. Yes, Indy, I'm recording. So we'll be making some of these. I'll do some of the coloring so you guys can get an idea, but I have a bunch of them that are already pre-colored, so we can just assemble the cards, and I can show you how I'm going to use my Hallmarks to use my cards. But as much as I love coloring, the only reason that I love doing it so much is because I have these really awesome tools that allow me to make the cards that I color. So I like putting a lot of different materials on my cards. Right here we have some cheesecloth and some buttons, and these are some metals and some crocheted flowers. These right here are paper flowers, and there's all kinds of stuff here. I like adding a lot of dimension. So the fact that I have a really good adhesive that'll keep all of these different materials down is really, really important. So for the cards that I'm going to be working on, I kind of use the same things on most of my cards. I tend to use craft glue a lot to glue my bases on, so all of my papers will be glued on most likely with craft glue. I've just gotten used to it, but you can absolutely use the Helmar acid-free glue. Works just as well. I'm going to use my Helmar 450 to adhere any of the paper flowers and some of the, what are these? Crocheted flowers, because Helmar 450 works really, really awesome on fabrics. I'll be using my Zap Dots to add dimension to all of these cute little images here. So the sentiments and the background image are going to go up with some Zap Dots. Let's see what else I have. And I know I have some scrap dots on my desk. I'm just trying to find it right now. Okay, here we go. And I'm going to use my scrap dots to adhere all of the metal embellishments. I found that this works absolutely awesome on metal and they never fall off. So this is what I'm going to use because I know I've used a lot of other products to adhere metal, and while it adheres temporarily, by the time I send my card to someone, the metals have fallen off because there's some kind of chemical reaction that doesn't work well. You won't have that issue with scrap dots. But like a lot of you guys know, that scrap dots are not only for adhering metals, they're for adding all kinds of dimension to your project. So you can use this as a 3D dimensional adhesive as well, instead of using these Zap Dots, which are just the foam adhesives. So just a personal preference. You can use either. A lot of times I do a lot of things where the product is not flat, so I can't use my Zap Dots on it, so I use my scrap dots on it. Works perfect for like shells and those kinds of things that are hollow in the back and you just need to add a base to the product so that it works. So super, super cool product. So I'll put these to the side and we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, let's make some room on my desk. And I'll just show you just this little quick stack. I haven't really planned what I'm going to make, so I have all of these little 6x6 stacks on my desk that we're going to play with. So we'll figure out which one to play with later on, but we have quite a variety on my desk. So do you guys have any questions before we get started? Is this glare bothering you? No? Okay, cool. Yeah, I like keeping my craft mat on my desk. It's easy to clean up, and I can always either glue, or sometimes I even put my glue on top of my craft mat and kind of let it solidify and use. I guess that'll be for another class, but my craft mat gets used all the time. So in order to get started, I'll show you what paper I've been using for coloring. I know I've been getting a lot of questions about what it is, and I know the kind of sneak peek video I didn't include my paper, but I've gone back on YouTube and actually shared the name of the paper in the comments. So if you guys go back to the video, you'll see the name of it. But it's Canson Watercolor Cold Press Fine Grain 90 pound. So this is the one that I have found. It's fairly inexpensive. I get it at any of, you know, the big box stores like Michael's or Joann's. So I don't necessarily think you need to get this brand, but I think the qualities that are really important when you're coloring with the distress markers are the fact that you have a watercolor paper, it is cold press. Fine grain is something you want to use because depending on the texture of the paper, sometimes it doesn't stamp as evenly on the paper, so that's why I find that the fine grain works really well. And anything under 90 pounds is a little too light for the water, so sometimes it tends to oversaturate. So you don't want something that's much lighter than the 90 pounds. At least that's what I found from playing around with my markers. And then, let's see. The next thing I have, and I know this is a very elementary right here, but a lot of folks like using, what are these? Like acrylic blocks, and I do too, but because I tend to take my markers with me wherever I go, this is what I've kind of come up with. It's a piece of white paper with a piece of acrylic sheet on top of it. So this is what I use to put my colors down when I just want to use a little bit of color and I don't want to color directly on the image. And I'll show you exactly what I do in a few minutes. And I just noticed that it pixelated again, and I don't know why, but I'll try to fix that in a second. But so this is what I do, and in order to glue them together, I used my Helmar 450 because it adhered really well. It dries clear, and it's just a quick way to adhere my paper together. So I have this little pad that I just take around with me. It doesn't weigh anything, and it works perfectly. So that's tip number 2. And then this right here is my little absorbing paper. It's just a little paper napkin, actually. I just fold it in 4 and keep it on the side. It's kind of like my little blot mat. So whenever I'm coloring and I need to either clean my brush or kind of dab off the colors, that's what I dab off on. So main things, watercolor paper, this little acrylic mat if you need it. You don't necessarily need it, but I like to have it. Your little paper on the side, and then my watercolor. These are water flow brushes. So they're basically kind of a paintbrush that has a water reservoir on it. So really easy to use, makes it really fun and quick to color with. So one of these, and then of course you need your distress markers, so we'll use that, and then we'll go ahead and assemble some cards in a minute. So I think to get started, I'm going to show you one that I made previously, and we'll color one and then we'll assemble all of the cards in a little bit. So this is the one that I colored earlier today. He's really cute and sweet, super duper bright. I love the way the colors came out. It kind of looks kind of three-dimensional, but it's only colored with these Tim Holtz Distress Markers, which I think is super, super fun. So I think we're going to color him, and then we'll make some cards. And I'll kind of leave them here on the side just so you guys can see kind of along the way. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit or zoom out. Zoom out. Okay. So we'll put him here. We'll put this here. We'll put my new one there. Make sure I can keep them all in the same view. And I don't know if you guys have noticed, but I've been getting a lot of commercials on the side and advertisement, and it's kind of frustrating, but I hope those will go away really soon. So to get started, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start, I don't like to color a lot of the areas at the same time. I kind of choose an area and then kind of go on to the next area, only because I don't like to oversaturate my paper. What color did you use for the little girl's hair? For the little girl's hair. This one? Oh, for this little girl, I used Vintage Photo. I used my base for any hair coloring, regardless of what color I'm doing, is always antique linen. So I'm doing blacks or browns or oranges or yellows or blondes. It's always antique linen. I always like to put a layer of something neutral. So that's what I use. I used tea dye. So I used a little bit of tea dye for like just my blender. And then when I wanted to add like a little bit more depth to the color, I blended some of my vintage photo with the black soot. So I used two of them to just add a little bit of shadowing to it. All right, so let's see. Okay, so let's start again. So I'm gonna use my my black soot. I'm not gonna do it directly on it. I'm gonna color on this little mat. So what I basically do is I just kind of scribble a little bit of color on this little acrylic sheet that I have, and then I'll go in and pick up with my brush. And one thing that you guys will notice is that I am left-handed, so I tend to go over my project. So I hope I don't cover it up too much and you guys can still see it. But I'll try to go slowly so that I don't block the view very much. So all I simply do is I just take my brush, and you notice how I didn't even do, I'm not pressing on the reservoir because you don't want to have too much water flow out. And then, I don't know if you guys can tell, but there's a very, very little bit of ink on my brush tip. And I'm just going to go and lay this down. The way that I'm coloring his little shirt is that I want it to be more white than anything else. So I'm using black more as a gray shadow on my image than anything else. So I'm just going to kind of lay the color around the border of the little shirt and kind of leaving the center white. So at this point, as I'm laying the color, I've noticed that the water's coming out a little, so I'm just going to brush it off and then keep coloring. So what I do is I kind of just pull from the top to the bottom and blend towards the center. So I'm blending towards the center and just making sure that I am still leaving those shadows and leaving some darkness. So now you see how I've done this part right here. I'm going to leave that part alone because I want it to dry for a second, but I'm going to go ahead and continue to color on the other side. Because remember, you can always add more color. It's a little bit harder to take away color. So I'm just going to go around the perimeter here. And again, just wipe my brush on my little napkin and then fill in. I know some people tend to kind of turn their picture around so that they're constantly just pulling color towards the center. I think because I am left-handed, I don't do that very much, but you can absolutely do that. So I've gone ahead and done that, and then I'm going to add some more shadowing in a second, but for now I'm going to let it dry. And now I'm going to move on to my flower, and for the flower I went ahead and used some barn door. And that one I already have here in the center, so I'll just go ahead and add a little bit more. And again, I didn't put it directly on the image, I put it on my little mat. So I'm going to pick up color, and again, just kind of add it in on the petals. And for this one, I'm kind of adding it all over because I wanted to kind of saturate those areas. I want those areas to be a lot darker, so I don't have to completely blend it at this point, because I'll go ahead and blend it once I'm done adding that little layer. So I'll just do this on all of them, and then I'll go in and blend it in a second, because there's nothing wrong with blending after the fact. You don't necessarily need to blend right away because the colors will still blend. So now I'm just going to go in and blend all of my colors. And right now I'm just kind of going in a circular motion because when I laid the color initially, I let it sit for a little bit. So it's going to keep that deep redness in the area where I let it sit. And then it's just going to do a little pastel-y shadow where I'm pulling the color from. So can you guys still see that okay? So again, I'm just adding color in the areas that I want it to be a little bit more intensified. And again, if you feel that it's getting a little bit too wet, don't be afraid to stop and let it dry and then move on to the next area, because you know that once that area dries, you can always come back to it and add more color. Do you see blurry on the screen? Did it freeze on you guys? So I put the marker on the paper. Yeah, I put the marker on this sheet right here, and then I pick up with the brush. Is it clear now? Oh gosh, you're scaring me, Lisa. So I'm just blending. Yeah, I noticed that it's going a little blurry. What's interesting is that, oh, here we go. On my side, the view that I had, I wasn't even seeing the coloring, which was scaring me. I thought it had frozen on you guys. Okay. So now I've gone ahead and colored that part, and I'm going to let that dry a little bit, and I'll show you how I add a little bit more color to it later. So we'll let that dry. Now I'm going to move on to the green, and I'm going to do something that is probably sacrilegious, but believe it or not, I don't use only my Tim Holtz markers. I have used my Stampin' Up markers because some of the colors from Stampin' Up are a little more intense than the colors that I found from Distress Markers. So I'm going to use my Stampin' Up, what color is this? Garden Green. And I'm going to use Distress Marker and Crushed Olives for the leaves of the rose. You're gonna have to get these markers. Yeah, I totally agree. I think you absolutely need some form of a watercoloring marker because they're really, really fun. So again, I'm just putting some color down, and again, I'm not putting it on a paper. I know it looks like it's a white sheet, but there is an acrylic sheet on top of it. The reason why I put the white paper underneath is so that I can see the colors through it. So, and then here goes my green. And I think I may even use peel paint. So just 3 different shades just so that I can give the image a lot of shadows. I promise you, Raven, that you will absolutely use them. It won't be a waste of money. So I'm just going to pick up my darker color, and I think in this case it's probably my peeled paint. And I'm just going to lay it in the areas that I want it to be darker. So in this case, I'm doing the areas that are closer to his head. I find that if there's an open space around it, that's where my light is coming into, and that's the only way that I make any sense out of coloring. So if something is really close to something else, it's generally dark in that area, so that's where I put my darker color. And if there's an open gap or some kind of white space around it, I generally like to think that that's where my light is coming from. So I don't color the same way that most Copic people color or pro markers. I kind of create my own rules as I go, and if it looks crazy, I just add color later on. So don't be intimidated by these markers. They're actually really easy to use, and it's like coloring with crayons. How about that? So now I'm going to add some of the crushed olive to the light area, and I'm just blending them all together. Just so that they look like they've been kind of kissed by the sun. You can use Distress ink pads too. Yeah, absolutely. You can use the Distress ink pads. You can use so many things. I mean, I have sprays and what do you call it? Refillable, the re-inkers as well, and those work really well. So now I'm just gonna add crushed olive to the little stem, and then once this dries up, I'll go in and add the darker colors. Okay, so again, I'm going to pick up some more dark color now that it's dried up a little, and just kind of intensify the colors just to give it that richness. Lisa, absolutely use your Stampin' Up markers. They work just as well. I just figured it out yesterday when I was coloring the leaves on here. they work just as well. So if you have them, use them, and actually use both of them. If you have this Tim Holtz, they work awesome together. So okay, so there goes that, and now I'm just going to add color to my little stem here, and again just adding the darkness in the areas that are closest to his body and along the stem, and leaving everything else that's kind of without a border lighter, because I think that's where my light source is coming from. So let's see, can you guys see that so far? So you see how this area right here is a lot wider because I have all of this white area. So that's where my light is coming from. So that's where I tend to put my lighter colors. And then this area right here, which is closer to his head or closer to the inside of the leaf, that's where I put the darker colors, just so that it looks like that's where the shading is. So now I'm going to go back in with my red, because now I felt like it doesn't have that intensity that I want yet. So I'm just going to add some more red in certain areas, just so they can have that extra little oomph. And again, remember, we do this to have fun, where it's not like, you know, it's an art contest. We're not going to win a prize from it. So don't be afraid to just play with it and have fun with it, because I don't think there's ever a right or wrong way of coloring. So don't be intimidated by those that are like, you know, superstar Copic colors or distress markers, because I am barely learning how to use these, but yet I have a lot of fun with them. And I think once you realize that, you know, you're just kind of enjoying yourself as you're coloring, that within itself makes the experience so much better. Okay, and then I just noticed that I forgot to put some color on these little petals that are here, so I'm going to add it now. And again, just a little bit of green closest to the leaf. Okay, so now I'm going to go back in with my black and finish off this area because I left it a little bit too light. And just adding more depth to the edges. I've never tried this technique and wanted to give it a go. Just wondering, can we use watercolor pencils? Absolutely. You can absolutely use watercolor pencils in the same way. I have some watercolor pencils by Faber-Castell that work absolutely wonderful for this. And I plan on doing a tutorial on that as well very soon. So stay tuned for that. I may even do a Hallmark class using my Faber-Castells, because they work really awesome. Even the gelatos work really awesome for certain techniques. They don't tend to be as translucent as watercolor markers, but you can absolutely use them that way. Okay, so now I've finished blending that, and you see this area right here that was kind of against the suspender and the shoulder area, I put a little bit more color on it, but not too excessive, because obviously I don't want it to be too dark. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and go in with the blue, and in this case I used, let's see, Faded Jeans. So I'm just going to, I want it to be really, really light, so what I do is I put my brush to the pad, and I already had some color here, so I didn't lay it down again, and I'm just putting my water brush on it so that it becomes really, really translucent, because right now I'm not going to be laying intense colors. I just want to color up the area. So I'm just going to fill in this whole area in blue, because it is a pretty big area. So again, you probably haven't seen other people color this way, because they actually follow some kind of rule, but I don't follow any rules. So I tend to lay all of my color in the beginning and have this be my whitest area, and then I'll go in with my actual marker and intensify the colors. So you see these areas right here where the color is just really, really intense, that's because I've gone in with my actual marker and I've added that intensity and then kind of lightened it up with my brush. So now that I've gone ahead and added all of that color, and I just want to make sure that I get all of the little edges, because once I go down with my brush to clean up the intensity of the colors, I don't want to have to move it around too much, because then that'll make it messy. So now I'm just going to take my distress marker and I'm going to lay color around the edges. And you can use your fine tip. I think I used my brush earlier because it does have a fine tip. So I'm just going to lay color around these areas, and all of the little creases you want to make sure that you get, because that's where all of the darkness is, because that's basically the folds of the paper or of the area in the stamp. So I'm just going to go ahead and add the color around those areas like that. And again, underneath the creases and in his little pocket. Again, not really thinking about it, just laying color like that. And all of his little jean crease marks. I'll do a little bit on his suspender, not too much. Following his little pockets. And again, his little creases. And then we'll go in and clean it up once I go in now. Okay. So now we have that, and you guys see how this and this looks completely different. Like this one looks like it has a glow, and this one doesn't. But that's because I went in and cleaned it up with my watercolor marker and made it a little more translucent, whereas this one I hadn't done that yet. So now we're just going to go in and we're just going to blend with our brush and kind of loosely soften those colors. I kind of tend to say, I don't even know, it might be like a tenth. I can't even say how much away from the corners. I don't like to go directly to the edges of the ink because I don't want it to flow out. So I always tend to color away from the darkest area rather than coloring towards the darkest area. I find that that makes sure that my colors don't bleed. So rather than pulling color this way, I pull it away from the darkest area. And that'll make sure that if it bleeds within my image and not outside of my image. And then I'll show you in a minute how I pull color off. So just blending it. And all I'm doing is softening those lines so that it doesn't look as if I just took a marker and laid it on there. And because I put a lot of color on the crease marks, that's where the most shadow is going to be, which is perfect because that's exactly where I want the darkness to be, right around those crease marks. I want it to be super intense. Okay, so you guys see that now there's a lot of whiteness in here. All I do is I literally take my brush and I clean it up so that it's completely white. And then I go in here and I brush that whole area out. And I keep just pulling. So now I'm just going to lay my brush on there and pick up color. So all I'm doing is picking up color. Believe it or not, you can actually remove color from watercolor paper. So now you see that I have that whiteness there, and that just gives it that really extra glow. In here, I also want this area to be a little bit whiter. So again, I'm just going to go in and saturate my paper with my brush. I had no color on there, right? And I'm just going to remove. So I removed it, and now I'm going to lay my brush and kind of pull down and remove color. So you guys see how now I have like that natural whiteness and that glow in that area? It's because all I did was I took my clean brush and kind of just laid the brush on there, pulled down, and that made all the color come back on my brush instead of going onto the paper. And that same way that I took the color off, you let it dry and you need to put more color, you can just add it on top. There's literally no right or wrong way of doing this. So right now I'm just cleaning it up, and then here I'm not pulling color away. I'm just going in a circular motion. I'm just moving the color around because I want it to be just a little cleaner in there. And I'm going to do the same thing on here. So now again, I'm just going to clean my brush, and then I'm going to lay it in here and pull color away. So again, just kind of pulling color away. So you see how now I have that whiteness in both of his little cuffs? Super cute. I make it is easy, I swear. It just takes a little bit of patience in the beginning, but other than that, I think once you guys play with it, you'll become superstars at it. So now I'm going to do my little boots, and for them I decided to use Vintage Photo and Black Soot. So what I'll do is I'm going to lay some Vintage Photo. Oh, you guys can't see that. Oh yeah, you can. And some Black Soot. So I would say probably 1/3 to 2/3 ratio. So if I put one line of black, I'll put 2 lines of brown or whatever other color, and that'll just make sure that it's not too dark, because I don't want it to be black brown. I want it to kind of be just like a mahogany. So that's what I've done. I just mixed them up right here, and then I'm just going to kind of clean off my brush. So I'm just going to go ahead and pick up a little bit of color, and again, we're just going to go in and add more of the darkness around the areas that are around the crease marks and around down here, because although there's a lot of light that's coming from here, there is a sole. So I like the area that's right above the sole to be a little bit darker. And then we'll do this little crease mark right here, but we'll leave this area right here a little bit white because we want that area to kind of glow, because again, we have this whole white area around it, so there has to be some kind of light source going in there, right? And then just clean this up. So now I'm going to clean my brush, and I'm just going to move on to the next shoot because I want to give this a little bit of time to dry. With the darker colors, if I go in and I brush it, I blend it right away, I find that sometimes it overblends and then I have to do a lot of cleanup, so I let it dry. So right now, again, I'm just going to go around the little crease marks, around the sole area, in his laces, of course, because they're so dark, and then around this area right here. Just cleaning off my brush, and now I'm going to go in and just blend this. Like that. And then just, whoops, I didn't mean to do that. Just blending it. And then I kind of got out of the line a little bit here, but believe it or not, you can go in there with your clean brush. And if you just kind of do that same technique that I showed you earlier to pull the color off of the area so it lightens, you can do the exact same thing to pull color off of areas where you kind of added color where you didn't want to. So do that. And then I'm just going to take my Tim Holtz Vintage Photo, and I'm just going to go directly on it now and kind of just add to the crease marks again. This time I'm doing it just with the Vintage Photo because I don't want that black anymore, because I already laid down a lot of the black. So I'm just going around the crease marks again, around the sole, and around this little cuff, and around his little shoe. And I'm going to let it dry for a little bit. And then I'll go in and blend again. Alright. So I think it's a little bit dry, so let me just go in and kind of blend it now. So I'm just, again, no perfect science, just kind of rolling my brush around so that it just intensifies all of the colors on here. And because I had already done a little bit of shading with that black and brown on the bottom, it still will look light in the areas that I wanted it to look light. So you guys see that? You see how there's that lightness coming on this area, but most of the intensity is around the shoe. You can't hear me, Linda? Okay. Can everybody else hear me? You hear the commercials, but not me? That is so weird. Okay, good. Linda always has to freak me out. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to color his face and his hands. And believe it or not, for that, I only use one color. I find that tea dye is absolutely the best color for doing any kind of Caucasian skin. It actually works for doing any darker skins as well, as long as you blend them with a little bit more color. So if I'm doing this color skin right here, I tend to just use tea dye. But if I'm trying to do like a tanner, more darker skin, I'll add maybe some vintage photo, or maybe I'll add a little bit of my black soot, but again, not as saturated. I'll probably do like 3 parts of tea dye and 1 part of black soot. I kind of just mess with it, but I am going to do a couple of videos to show you how I do those, and I'll definitely share those later on. So now I'm just going to take my tea dye, and I'm just going to lay it here, like that. And then I'm just going to take my brush and kind of pick up some color. And again, you see how this is the area where all of that whiteness is on, and then this is the area where it's completely covered by something else. That's the area where I'm going to put all the intensity of the color. So all around the face that's covered by the hair, and all around this area that's kind of shadowed by the rose petal. I mean the rose stem. So I'm just laying it really nice and thick around here, and then lighter around the face. So now I'm just going to go in, and in a circular motion, I'm just going to soften those lines around the face, just making sure that it doesn't look like there's a line there. So we're just softening those lines like this. And I found that some folks like to wet their paper before they color. I don't do that because I find that I haven't ever had an issue with my lines showing so richly. But if you feel more comfortable wetting your paper before you lay down your color, absolutely do that. You can always try that. So let me see. Okay, so I've gone ahead and did that, and all I've done is I'm pulling the colors toward the center, like that. And then I'm going to go ahead and grab some more. And with the face, I tend to add the darkness even though the paper is wet, because it doesn't, the area is so big that it doesn't really make a difference. So I'm adding that, and again, I'm just pulling colors so that I don't have those really dark lines around the face. Like this. And then just pulling color toward the center. And then we have something that looks like that. So you see how I have that whiteness here, and then just a little more shadow around there. Then I'm going to take my worn lipstick, and I'm going to use that for the cheeks. So just some worn lipstick, and then I'm just going to add it right here to his cheeky, really nice and thick. Let me see if I can zoom in so you guys can see this a little bit better. And then adding it just as a hue on the side, because it's not a full cheek, it's just kind of like a semi-cheek. And let it dry a little bit, and then I go in and blend it so that I don't have any harsh lines or any kind of watermark lines around the cheek. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and do his hands. Aww! Three orders thanks to the show, Raven. I'm sorry. Let me zoom out again so you guys can see the whole thing. Just make sure that you order some Homer along the way too, because you're going to need that to glue all these little cuties down. You're hooked on coloring too? Too funny. So I'm going to add, again, color around his little thumb, around this area here, and then around this area here. Again, all of the areas have some kind of border, so. And now I'm just going to blend really quick. And you'll notice that once you start doing this, this will go so much faster. I'm just going slow now so that you guys can follow. But once you do it, you'll see how quickly it'll go. And then I just noticed that I didn't color his little shoe completely, so no worries. All I have to do is take some color from already where I laid it and just blend it into the bottom. And let me see. I'll just grab some from here. Make sure his little heels are covered. And I made a goof again, but I can clean it up, so no worries. Okay. So see, now we have him pretty much 100% other than the fact that he has no color on his hair. We need to do that, right? So here's what I'm going to do. No perfect science. Again, I'm just going to take my antique linen, and in this case, because his hair is such a big area, I'm just going to lay color right on it. So I'm just going to lay it in here, and because antique linen is really, really neutral, you can't mess it up. So I just do kind of a line in the center, and that's where all of my light is going to be coming from. So again, here goes that rule again that I say. Any area that's kind of broad and doesn't have any harsh lines on it tends to be where I have my lightest area, and anything that has lines on it is where I have my darker area. So I'm definitely going to put darker areas around here and darker areas around the top, but the center is generally going to be lighter for me because there's no lines touching it. So that's kind of my rule. So now I'm just going in and blending the whole thing, going from top to bottom because I want the whole area to be covered in the antique linen. Right? And now I'm going to take my tea dye, and I'm just going to lay some color along the crease of his hair right here and along the crease on his forehead. And again, you can pick it up directly from your paper like I did previously, or you can just lay it on like this, whatever you wish. And again, I'm just going to add some on the top just because I want it to be a little more intense there. But again, I'm leaving this area kind of white because that's where I want my light source to be. And now I'm just going to go in and blend it so it softens up the lines because we don't want him to look like he had markers on his head. Because right, little boys don't have marker lines on their heads. So just coloring slowly like that, and then we're gonna have something like that. I have a little bit of pixelation on my video view, but I hope you guys can see it. So now I have that, and then I'm gonna go in and take my vintage photo and do the exact same thing, except this time I'm going to do as close as I can to the borders or the edges so that it's a really fine line and it doesn't take away from the lightness of the other colors, because I still wanted to show the tea dye and I also wanted to show the antique photo. So I'm adding that. And then again, I'm just going to wipe my brush and just blend away. So I'm pulling it as far down as I can just so that it gives a little bit of color to the sides, but doesn't take away from the antique linen and the tea dye. And then again, here I'm just going to do the same thing. Just pulling color away so that it blends softly. So he has kind of like dirty blonde hair, but he's not completely blonde. Okay, so this is what we have. And at this point, I think he's pretty much done, except for one thing. I think my rose still needs some more coloring, so I'm just going to, out of bad habit, add some more directly on. So I'm just going to take my actual marker and lay color in the areas where I think it needed a little bit more intensity. And at this point, if you find that your red is not deep enough, don't be afraid to add a little bit of black soot to it. That'll give it some really good depth, and it'll you don't have to worry about having to buy so many markers. So when in doubt and you need any kind of darkness, don't be afraid to mix your colors with a little bit of black soot, because that'll actually make them darker, and then you don't have to waste any more money buying more markers. So that's kind of my, again, another cheap trick. Okay, so I think now he's done. Can you guys see him okay now? So here goes the one I did earlier. And you see how the flower is a lot lighter in this one? But that's because I went a lot lighter on the outside than I did on this one. But because I went much richer on this one, I needed the edges to be a lot. Raven, the tip was to, whenever you need to darken any color or make any kind of accent, make the color darker with a little bit of black soot, and then you don't need to buy 100 markers. So there goes them. So now I'm going to put these two little puppies to the side and see if you guys have any questions, and then we'll go ahead and make the cards so you guys can see how I adhere those together. Do you guys have any questions? Move all my little gadgets away. Are you coloring on watercolor paper? Yep, watercolor paper. I showed that one earlier, but I'll show it again for those of you that came in later. It's Canson watercolor, cold press, fine grain, 90-pound paper. So this is what I find that works really well. But again, anything that kind of doesn't have to be Canson. It could be just watercolor paper, cold press, fine grain, 90-pound, and I think that'll work really well. So here's the card that I made earlier, and I want to make a few more of those. Where can you get it? I picked mine up in Michael's. I've seen it at Joann's, so a bunch of stores do have it. Here goes my little sack of other little dolls that I'm working on. This one's not done yet, but gotta finish her up. But these are the ones that we're gonna work on today, since I have them already pre-colored. And then here are the two cuties that I did for the video that I made the other day. And then here goes that cute little prisoner guy. Edwin with the stolen heart. And here goes a sweet little Snow White looking one. I know, I've been coloring, huh? Here goes these sweet little babies. And this one I love too. She's so cute. And then these are just two that I haven't worked on yet, but I want to color those soon. So let me put these away, and then we'll make our card. So let me see if I remember. Let me measure this, because I completely blocked out. I think this is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5.5-inch card. You couldn't see them? Do you want me to show them again? Did you have a commercial? Oh, okay. I'll show you guys. So here goes cute little one. I forgot her name. I think it's like Tilda with Cozy Heart. And then there's this one. I think it's Tilda Goes Bananas. I'm not sure, but she's not completely colored. Her hair's not done. Her fruits aren't done. So still working on her. Then there's these, I think they're called Tilda with bunny slippers, maybe? And then I maybe Tilda with apple. And this one I kind of did a little faux pleating on her dress. Yeah, they don't have mouths. Isn't that funny? And this one is Edwin with Stolen Heart. And let's see who else. Oh, and this one, I don't know. I think it's Hello Tilda. I think that's what this one is called. So that's all the ones that I've colored up already. Oh, let me leave these out because these are the ones I'm going to use for the card. So my card base is going to be, oh, where did I go? Where did my card base go? Okay. I'm just going to use some, and not this one because this one's all wrinkled. Let's go get some more. Where did I put my craft paper? Sorry guys, I have to go open up a new pack. Okay. So when I got some sheets of craft paper, and I'm going to grab my paper trimmer, which is over here somewhere. I'm going to move my cards to the side so that I can cut all this up because I didn't do any prep work, unfortunately. So I'm going to cut it here. And if you guys are wondering, I'm using a Purple Cows 2-in-1 trimmer. It's totally awesome. It's probably the best paper trimmer I've ever used. And trust me, I've gone through one too many paper trimmers. So I'm just going to cut 3 of these. That's a little wrinkled. Let's move it to the other side. So I'm just cutting 5.5 by 11 sheets of paper. So then when I cut it, I fold it in half. It'll be a 5.5 inch card. And then let's see. I have a little bone folder here somewhere. They're 5.5 by 11, Vanessa. So I'm just gonna fold it in half like this, and just crease it with my bone folder. Yep, 5.5 by 11. So when you fold it in half, it's a 5.5 inch card. So I'm just going to fold all 3 of them just to save some time. Okay. Bye, Raven. Thanks for joining. So now we have this 5.5 inch card, and now I'm just gonna pick some papers. Let's see. Trying to figure out what color pad I want to do because I'm doing her, and I don't want it to be too many colors. Let's see. Is this gonna work? Maybe. Maybe this one. Let's try that. Alright, so let's find a couple of colors here so we can layer it on. I think I'm going to use this for the base. And then I think I'm going to use this one to layer on top, like that. And I'll use, let's find another color in here somewhere. Maybe some, maybe that. Yep, I think I'll do that. Maybe I'll switch it around. Hold on, let's do this. Base, color, and blue. Okay, we'll do that. This one's basic gray, serendipity. And then, again, take my little paper cutter. And I'm going to do, I believe, 5 1/4. I'm not sure if that's exactly what the measurements were before, but I'm pretty sure they were. We'll test it out and see what happens. We can always cut up some more, but we can't add paper, right? So 5 1/4. Yep, that's exactly what it was. So 5 1/4 for the first layer. And then the next layer is just going to be another 1/4 of an inch off. I don't know why I've become obsessed with just cutting 1/4 inches off. So this one will be 5 inches. And then the center one is going to be, let's see, 3 inches, 3 1/2 inches. Let me measure this one because now I don't remember. This one was 1, 2, 3, 4 1/4 inches. Look at that. So 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, because this one is going to go all the way. Alright, so we have that now. So we're going to go ahead and start gluing them down. And it's going to be a top folding card. And let me just zoom out a little bit so you guys can see this better. Okay. So I'm just going to use my craft glue for this. Just adhering some around the border. And now I'm going to lay this one on top, and this is just going to go right on top of it. Again, using my craft glue for this. Again, this is just a 1/4 of an inch away from all of the border, so perfect. And then we're going to put this in the middle. This was 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. Again, using my craft glue. I really love using liquid adhesives to glue things down. I know you guys know that I'm always complaining about the heat in Texas, and when I use liquid adhesives, I don't have that issue. So it kind of guarantees that my cards will never fall apart. So just laying that down. So now we have this as the base. And now that I think about it, I probably could have saved paper if I just put these little pieces in. But you know what? You never think about those things when you're doing it, right? And then I'm going to take a little doily, put that in the center. And again, I'm just going to use my craft glue. I'm just going to put a little bit of adhesive around all of these little circles, and it probably would help if I had it open. So So just putting it around the circles here. Just where the thicker lines on the doily are. And then just some around the center as well. And I just noticed that the doily I put on here is a really mini tiny itty bitty one. And I should have used a bigger one. So let me go grab a bigger doily and fix this up before it glues down. And because I have adhesive on there already, I think it'll be okay if I just pull it stay down. Yeah, I think so. I think it'll be fine. We'll just put a little bit on this edge and a little bit on this edge here. Aren't these funky doilies? I found these in a little town called Fredericksburg in Texas, and I thought they were so cute I had to pick them up. Yep, it's not a die, it's just a doily. Just a doily. So there goes that. And now I'm going to grab, let me see, a little piece of cheesecloth. And glue this down too. So I'm just going to cut a little piece. And cut a little piece again. And now I'm going to open it up and just lay it down. On the edge here somehow. And this just adds a lot of texture to the card. Not necessarily so much color, but you can absolutely color your cheesecloth in any color that you wish. As a matter of fact, oh, I don't have it on my desk anymore, but I had a couple of pieces in purple earlier from another card that I made. So I'm just kind of putting these to the side. And I just adhered it down with my craft glue, which I probably could have used quick dry adhesive, but I didn't. This works just as well. And then I'm just going to take another little piece and put it on the bottom here as well. Cheesecloth. Yeah? Just cheesecloth you find in your local grocery store. Put some adhesive here. And I'm going to lay that there. Like that. Ah. And then I'm going to take one of my cute little dolls here. And I'm going to put a bunch of zap dots on the back. Just so that she's nicely propped up. Dryer sheets, you can use anything. Absolutely. Dryer sheets would work awesome too. Yeah, it looks really fun dyed. So, adding these on, and I'm trying to see what I did with my little chalk box. Let me see, color box ink in brown. I know I had it here somewhere. Of course now I can't find it. Where did they go? Just because I wanted to ink the edges. Oh, here it goes. I found them. There we go. And I think this is called Creamy Brown. I love this color. I use it a lot. So I'm just going to ink the edges. And again, it's just color box Creamy Brown. They're really inexpensive. I think they cost like $2. And if you get a re-inker, you can constantly re-ink it. And it'll last forever. And it's a nice little foam, so it doesn't oversaturate your paper and doesn't leave those big, deep marks on it like some other inks do. So, yeah, it's my favorite. I use this a lot. And then I have this little stack right here of colors that I pretty much use on everything too. There are a lot of primaries like purples and blues and yellows and oranges and pinks and whites. So, pretty awesome stuff. You need some of these? Medicine gauze absolutely works perfect. I think it's whatever you can find that's accessible to you works fine. So now I'm just going to put her right here in the center, like this. And then let's go ahead and do our sentiment. Let me see if I can grab. I probably will use this for the background just because I have that little piece laying around. So let me find a piece of, let me see if I have an extra piece of white paper in here somewhere. I think I do. Here we go. So here goes just a little piece of white paper, and I'm going to use the sentiment from, actually this is not the sentiment I wanted to use. Let me see if I find it. I wanted to use Hello Sunshine, and I'm pretty sure I have it here somewhere. Okay, I had it here a second ago. Where did it go? How weird is that? I just had it here. Let me see if I find it. No. Isn't it funny how you, when you're going to use something, you're not going to use something and say, oh, look where it is. It's down here. Found it. But of course that sentiment is not here. It must have disappeared somewhere on my... Oh, here we go. Okay, got it. Alright, so I'm going to use archival ink because I love using archival for for stamping. So I'm just going to ink it up and then just put it kind of on the corner here. All done. There goes my little sentiment. And I'm going to trim it with my scissors, which disappeared too. And I'm just going to trim it as close as I can, still keeping it in a little rectangle shape, but not having too much white because I'm going to put a border around it. So just trim. So now I have that. And I'm going to ink it too. Ink the little edges on it. And then I'm going to take a piece of scrap paper that I have here. This little cute one, because I use this on the card so it'll tie everything in. I'm going to glue it down with my craft glue. And again, I'm just going to leave kind of like 1/8 of an inch around the border. Hey, Janet! And I'm going to cut this off. So now we have this cute little sentiment that I'm going to add on there. So I'm going to put that here. I'm going to put a little zap dot behind it. I'm going to use a black one because of course now I misplaced my white ones, but it doesn't matter because you won't see it. Just pull this off. And it's going to go on here. So I'm going to put a little bit of craft glue on the white area. It doesn't have the adhesive. And then the reason why I put the dimensional on here is because this right here has dimension underneath. So the area that's going to be laying off of that paper needs some additional dimension. So that's why I put a dimension on the side and not on this area. So we have something that looks like that now. Yes, Linda, I am making your card, Linda. So there goes that. And now I'm going to go ahead and grab some flowers. Let me see. what I find in my little stack of stuff. I'm going to put some of those and some of these. And let's see, maybe a red one. I think we're going to do red. And what else do I have? I think that'll be good. So let me just lay it out to make sure that I like the way it's going to look. So there goes a red one. You know what, I think I'm going to actually add a swirl on here too. No, don't like the swirl. So I'm going to add this flower and maybe that flower and maybe pink one. And then, let's see something. That's too much. And maybe some of these too. Maybe yellow. And this greenish one over there. Add a petal. I don't have any petals here. And I'm going to add some of those little metal embellishments too. I'm going to see, I'm trying to see if I have any more of those big ones. I like the big magnolias better, but I can't seem to find them right now. You guys hear me shuffling through all my bags? Oh, here we go. Found it. Here goes one of those giant ones. Okay. So nix this one right here. And then we'll use one of these cute little metal sprays right here. Okay. So I'm going to glue down my metal spray first. And I'm going to glue this down with my scrap dots, because again I find that the scrap dots is what really works to keep it down. So I'm just going to put some scrap dots on the back. And keep in mind that scrap dots take a little bit to dry, but that's okay because I'm adding so much layers on top with different adhesives that it shouldn't make a big deal if I layer it. Just before you send it out, make sure that you wait a little while for it to dry. So now this one right here, I'm going to glue down with my quick dry. Just a little generous glob on there. Kind of put it off to the side here. And then let me see if I can find a little tool or a pen just to curl this little wire here. Make sure that I can keep it on, it doesn't look like it doesn't belong. So just curling my little wires. And if you can't find a tool, just curl them on your fingers. Oh, sorry, I didn't realize I was out of camera. Hey, no, I can't put another pink one because that's going to take away from that one. So let me just find another color to put there. This cute little purple. Let's do that. Okay. So I'm going to put that one there somehow. And again, I'm going to use my 450 for this. Nice little generous glob. Lay this one on the card. Lay this one to the side of this flower right here. And then I'm going to tuck these little crocheted ones underneath the petal and the flower here. Put this one up here somehow. Like that. And then I have some little pearls here. And I'm going to cut 2 of them off, and then I'm going to glue them down with my gemstone. Just to make sure that they stay on forever. So I'm just going to put a little bit of glue right there, a little bit of glue right there. And I don't feel bad putting too much because gemstone dries clear, so don't worry if it looks white at first, but it'll definitely dry clear. So there goes that. And that's it. That's pretty much the card. So there goes the new card. Very similar to the previous one. Oh, you know what? I forgot to put the little buttons. Let's put the little buttons. We need some little buttons up here. Just because we don't have enough going on the card. But I like to over embellish sometimes, so nothing wrong with that. Let me see what buttons I'm going to use. Put a little blue one. I have this little jar full of them. And a little yellow. And let's see if I can find a pink one in here. That'll work. I guess I must have been a really big fan of the pink ones because I used almost every one of them. Look at that. Okay, here goes the pink one. So, we'll use that. So I'm going to adhere these down with my quick dry. So I'm going to lay one on the base, on the top. Then I'm going to lay one above it, kind of offset. And then I'll add the pink one on the bottom, kind of on top of it too. Bye, Sandy. Thanks for joining. Oh, Vanessa, you guys, you guys are so sweet. And there goes the pink one. And you guys see that I kind of put it on an angle. And I didn't use my scrap dots to add dimension, but I mean, these things are not falling off. And I just glued them down 2 seconds ago. So 450 works really awesome for that because it's a thicker type of glue and it holds it perfectly. I don't have to worry about it falling down or anything. So it's all down. The only thing that's still a little bit wet is this little metal metal embellishment on here because I put the scrap dots underneath it, but not to worry. You just set it to the side for a little bit and it'll be done good to go in a little bit. So I think that's pretty much it for now. I went a little bit over, which shame on me. But I hope you guys learned a lot of really cool tricks today. I was hoping that I could share a lot, and I think I did. So if you have any questions, definitely feel free to ask me. If you make any projects that look similar to this, or you just make a project that's inspired by this, I'd love to see it. We'd love to see it on the Helmar channel as well. So definitely go on Facebook and post it. We love seeing the stuff that you make, so definitely share it. And again, if you have any questions, definitely go on the Helmar page and ask us. We're always, Helmar has one of the coolest design teams out there. Not because I'm on it, because of everybody else that's on it. And they are so uberly helpful and uberly excited to share and to help whenever they can. So definitely reach out to us as much as you can. That's what we're here for. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, and then I'll chat for a few minutes, and then I think I'm going to hit the sack. So thank you so much for watching.